The unseen cost of success. The decision to keep moving forward wasn't easy, but I had made it. Days turned into weeks, and I threw myself deeper into the work. I retooled the social media channel, refined my message, and committed myself fully to building the platform I had envisioned. But something was happening, something I didn't expect. As the channel started to grow, slowly but surely, I began to feel the strain in other areas of my life. It was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. A missed dinner here, a late night there. But soon, the demands of this new path started to weigh heavily on me. My phone buzzed again, a notification from my channel, followed by a message from a friend I hadn't seen in months. We should catch up soon. Been a while. I stared at the message for a moment, feeling the weight of it. I hadn't responded to the last 3 messages from him, and I knew, deep down, that the longer I stayed on this road, the more distant those relationships would become. But I didn't have time to think about that. Not now. There were emails to answer, content to produce, and plans to execute. The platform was growing, but it demanded more of me than I had anticipated. My future self had warned me about setbacks and failures, but he hadn't prepared me for this, success, and the hidden cost it carried. I was sitting at my desk again, drowning in a list of tasks when he appeared. "You look tired," he said, leaning against the wall, his expression unreadable. I didn't bother turning to face him. "I've been working nonstop," I muttered, rubbing my temples. "There's just too much. It's all happening so fast, and I'm trying to keep up, but it feels like I'm losing control." He was silent for a moment, watching me. "You're succeeding," he said finally. "The channel is growing. People are responding to you now." I nodded, but the excitement I should have felt wasn't there. "Yeah, but it's costing me more than I thought it would." He stepped closer, pulling up a chair beside me. "What do you mean?" I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "I'm losing time. With my friends, with my family. I can't remember the last time I had a real conversation with anyone outside of work. It's like I'm always on. There's no off switch anymore. Every time I think I've caught up, there's something else to do." He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "That's the unseen cost." He said softly. "Success requires sacrifice. You're building something, but in doing so, you're leaving parts of your old life behind." I frowned, the weight of his words pressing down on me. But I didn't expect it to feel like this. I thought once things started to grow, it would get easier. But it's just more work, more pressure, more expectations. I feel like I'm being pulled in 1,000 directions, and I'm not sure I can keep up. He leaned forward, his expression more serious than usual. "This is the part they don't tell you about," he said. "Everyone talks about the hustle, the grind, the glory of success, but no one talks about the toll it takes on you personally. Every step you take toward greatness comes with a cost: time, relationships, even your own peace of mind." I stared at him, my mind spinning. So what do I do? If this is the cost of success, how do I balance it all? He studied me for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. "You can't," he said finally. "That's the truth of it. There is no balance. Not if you're chasing something bigger than yourself. You have to decide what you're willing to sacrifice." His words hit hard, but I knew he was right. I had been trying to juggle everything: my old life, my new path, my relationships, and my work. But it was becoming clear that something had to give. I leaned forward, resting my head in my hands. "I don't know if I'm ready to lose it all," I whispered. "I didn't sign up for this. I just wanted to help people, to build something meaningful." "And you are," he said, his voice gentle now. "But building something meaningful comes with a cost. Every great success story is filled with sacrifices. Some lose time, some lose relationships, some lose pieces of themselves along the way. You have to ask yourself, what are you willing to give up to get where you want to go?" I swallowed hard, the weight of the question sinking in. I had been so focused on moving forward that I hadn't considered what I was leaving behind. My friendships were fading, my family barely saw me, and the constant pressure was draining the energy out of me, day by day. "I don't want to lose everything," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "You don't have to lose everything, but you will lose something. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice?" I stared at him, my chest tight. I had never thought about success in these terms. I had imagined the glory, the growth, the impact. but I hadn't considered the toll it would take on my personal life, on my mind, on my soul. How did you do it? I asked, my voice raw with emotion. How did you manage to become you without losing everything along the way? He was silent for a long time, his gaze distant, as though he were remembering something painful. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I had ever heard it. I didn't, he said simply. I lost more than I expected. I made choices that cost me relationships, time, and pieces of myself that I can never get back. That's the truth. Success came, but it wasn't without sacrifices. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I had looked at my future self as this perfect version of me, someone who had figured it all out, who had reached greatness without the scars. But now I was seeing the truth. He had paid a price, just like everyone else who walked this path. But, he continued, his voice gaining strength, I made peace with those sacrifices, because I knew that what I was building, what you are building, was worth it. The question isn't whether you can avoid sacrifice. The question is whether you believe the reward is worth the cost. I looked away, my heart heavy. I'm not sure if it is, I admitted. What if I get to the end of this and realize I've lost too much? What if I wake up one day and regret everything I've given up? He stood up, his gaze soft but resolute. That's a risk you'll have to take. There are no guarantees, but I can tell you this. Regret doesn't come from taking risks. It comes from not taking them. You'll regret the things you didn't do far more than the things you did. And if you turn back now, you'll never know what you're capable of. You'll never meet me. The room was silent, his words echoing in my mind. I had never thought about it that way. Regret for the risks not taken. It made sense, but it didn't make the decision any easier. So what now? I asked, my voice shaky. Now, you choose, he said simply. You decide what you're willing to sacrifice, and you make peace with that decision. If you choose to keep going, know that it won't get easier, but it will get clearer, and eventually, the rewards will outweigh the costs. I nodded, though my mind was still spinning. I didn't know what I was ready to sacrifice or how much I was willing to lose, but I knew one thing, turning back wasn't an option. Not anymore. Okay, I said finally, my voice steadying. I'll keep going. I'll figure it out. He smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes. Good, but remember, the further you go, the more you'll have to give. That's the cost of success. Just make sure you're ready for it. And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone with the weight of the choices I had yet to make. I sat in silence, the reality of the path ahead sinking in. There were no easy answers. There never had been. But I was beginning to understand something I hadn't before. Success wasn't just about achievement. It was about endurance. It was about sacrifice. And the question I had to answer was whether I was ready to pay that price. The unseen cost of success delves deeply into the emotional and psychological toll of striving for greatness. The present self grapples with the sacrifices that success demands: time, relationships, and even pieces of his identity. This chapter adds layers of complexity to the journey, showing that while the external markers of success may be achieved, there's an internal cost that must be reckoned with. One must wonder how far will the present self go, and what sacrifices he will ultimately make to become his future self.